Ladies and gentlemen, Radleyans, friends of Radley, and also to those around the world who I know are watching this, on all continents. I know we have some penguins chiming in from Antarctica who are particularly keen. At the moment, we have people from the mountains of West Virginia, if there are mountains in West Virginia, and from the valleys of Eritrea, if there are valleys in Eritrea. We have people all over the globe focusing in on this moment, turning off the football and watching Declamations. So thank you and welcome to all of you as we simulcast across 7 continents. It's been a wonderful competition. We've seen an extraordinary range from the brilliant, our finalists, and particularly the bronze, silver, and gold medalists that we'll be seeing tonight. But actually every stage of this competition is a joy. It's a joy as a form master. As a form master, I have 7 people in my form. Only one of them was good enough to go through to the semi-finals, which is slightly shaming for me as master in charge of declamations. But actually seeing boys struggle is part of this. It's hard to learn something. It's hard to make it your own. It's hard to give an angle to a piece of work that is ancient, that people may have heard several times before. It's hard too, in the case of some of our finalists, to be declaiming something that's never been declaimed before, or in the case of one of our finalists, to be declaiming something very personal because he wrote it himself. I sometimes think the hardest thing to do as a teenage boy is to stand up and say something true in front of anyone else at all, and perhaps sometimes even in front of a mirror. It's hard to say to someone, I love you. It's hard to say I'm frightened. It's hard to say I'm not happy. And I think one way that poetry, that speeches, that someone else is writing can help is to provide a way of saying that. Is to provide a shield in some cases, but also a code in others. Now I hope that what the boys are saying tonight is something entirely positive. I hope what they're saying tonight, and I'm sure what they're saying tonight, in fact, is a celebration. And ultimately, that's what this evening is about. After weeks of competition, inside socials, inside form masters' rooms, semi-finals, final, we have now the very best. The 3 best declaimers from every year group. 15 of the best declaimers in the school. We had 2 judges for the first time on Monday who were extraordinarily complimentary about many of our boys. One of them in particular, Kieran McConville, experienced actor, director, playwright himself, said of some of the boys that he didn't have a fraction of their confidence and their control. So what you're going to see tonight is, I hope, going to be joyous, going to be impressive, going to be fun, and it wouldn't be the same without you. Without the parents who can be here, and thank you so much for being able to come. Without the parents who I know are watching live. And without everyone who decides that Radley may be a place where they can trust the most precious thing they have, which is your children. So we hope we're doing something good with them this evening. We hope that you enjoy it. Without further ado, Mr. Beattie is going to be our first declaimer.
The Executive by John Betchman. I'm a young executive. No cuffs to minor cleaner. I have a slimline briefcase, and I use the firm's Cortina. In every roadside hostelry, from here to Burgess Hill, the Mate Hotel, all know me well, and let me sign the bill. You ask me what it is I do? Well, actually, I'm partly a liaison man and partly PRO. Essentially, I integrate the current export drive, and basically I'm viable from 10 o'clock till 5. For vital, off-the-record work, that's talking transport-wise, I've a Scarlet Aston Martin. And does she go? She for lies. Pedestrians and dogs and cats, we mark them down for slaughter. I also own a speedboat, which has never touched the water. She's built of fiberglass, of course. I call her Mandy Jane, after a bird I used to know. No soda, please. Just plain. And how did I acquire her? Well, to tell you about that, and to put you in the picture, I must wear my other hat. I do some mild developing. The sort of place I need is a quiet country market town that's rather run to seed. A luncheon and a drink or two, a little savoir-faire. I fix the planning officer, the town clerk, and the mayor. And if some preservationist attempts to interfere, a dangerous structure notice from the borough engineer will settle any buildings that are standing in our way. The modern style, sir, with respect, has really come to stay.
I am going to be declaiming an extract from the park scene in Good Will Hunting, written by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. I thought about what you said to me the other day, about my painting. Stayed up half the night thinking about it. Something occurred to me and I fell into a deep, peaceful sleep and haven't thought about you since. You know what occurred to me? You're just a boy. You don't have the faintest idea what you're talking about. It's all right. You've never been out of London. So, if I asked you about art, you'd probably give me a précis on every art book ever written. Michelangelo? You know a lot about him. Life's work, political aspirations, him and the Pope, sexual orientation, the whole works, right? But I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You've never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling. And if I asked you about women, you'd probably give me a syllabus of your personal favorites. You may have even been laid a few times. But you can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy. Now, you're a tough kid. I asked you about war. You probably throw Shakespeare at me, right? Once more into the breach, dear friends. But you've never been near one. You've never held your best friend's head in your lap and watched him gasp his last breath, looking to you for help. And if I asked you about love, you'd probably quote me a sonnet. But you've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable. Known someone could level you with her eyes, feeling like God put an angel on earth just for you, who could rescue you from the depths of hell. And you wouldn't know what it's like to be her angel, and to have that love for her, to be there forever, through anything, through cancer. And you wouldn't know about sleeping, sitting up in a hospital room for 2 months, holding her hands because the doctors can see in your eyes that the terms visiting hours don't apply to you. You don't know about real loss because that only occurs when you love something more than you love yourself. I doubt you've ever dared to love anybody that much. I look at you. I don't see an intelligent, confident man. I see a cocky, scared boy. But you're a genius, Will. No one denies that. No one could possibly understand the depths of you. But you presume to know everything about me because you saw a painting of mine and you ripped my life apart. You're an orphan, right? Do you think I know the first thing about how hard your life has been, how you feel, who you are, because I read Oliver Twist? Does that encapsulate you? Personally, I don't care about all that. Because you know what? I can't learn anything from you. I can't read in some stupid book. Unless you want to talk about you. Who you are. And I'm fascinated. I'm in. But you don't want to do that, do you? You're terrified of what you might say. Your move, pal.
I kind of want to talk about mine before I actually start. So this is I'll be declaiming an open letter that Frank Ocean, who's a pop musician, posted onto his Tumblr. For those that don't know, Tumblr is a social media platform. And in it, he comes out as someone of the LGBT community. It really struck a chord with me, especially this past year has been possibly the most tumultuous year of my life. So yeah. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I'm starting to think we're a lot alike. Human beings spinning on blackness, or wanting to be seen, heard, touched, paid attention to. My loved ones are everything to me here. For the past year or 3, I've screamed at my Creator, screamed at the clouds in the sky for some explanation. Mercy, maybe. For peace of mind to reign like mana somehow. Four summers ago, I met somebody. I was 19 years old. He was as well. We spent that summer and the summer after together. Every day, almost. And on the days we were together, time would glide. Most of the day, I'd see him and his smile. I'd hear his conversation and his silence. Until it was time to sleep. Sleep I often shared with him. By the time I realized I was in love, it was malignant. It was hopeless. There was no escaping, no negotiating with the feeling. No choice. It was my first love. It changed my life. Back then, my mind would wander to all the women I'd been with, the ones I had cared for and thought that I was in love with. I reminisced about the sentimental love songs I enjoyed as a teenager, the the ones I played when I experienced a girlfriend for the first time. I realized these songs were written in a language I did not yet speak. I realized too much too quickly. Imagine being thrown from a cliff, but I wasn't on a cliff, I was in a Nissan Maxima, the same car I packed with bags and drove to Los Angeles in. I sat there and told my friend how I felt. I wept as the words left my mouth. I grieved for them, knowing that I could never take them back for myself. He patted my back. He said kind things. He did his best, but he wouldn't admit the same. He had to go back inside soon. It was late and his girlfriend was waiting for him upstairs. He wouldn't admit the truth about his feelings for me for another 3 years. I thought I only imagined that reciprocity for years. Imagine being thrown from a cliff. But I wasn't in a cliff, I was still in my car, telling myself it was going to be fine and to take deep breaths. I took those breaths and carried on. I kept up a peculiar friendship with him because I couldn't imagine keeping up my life without him. I struggled to master myself and my emotions. I wasn't always successful, but the dance went on. Thank you.
I'm going to be doing an extract from Sir Thomas More by William Shakespeare. Grant them removed, and grant that this your noise have chid down all the majesty of England. Imagine that you see the wretched strangers, their babies at their backs, with their poor luggage, plodding to the ports and coasts for transportation, and that you sit as kings in your desires, authority quite silenced by your brawn, and you in wrath of your opinions clothed. What had you got? I'll tell you. You had taught how insolence and strong hand should prevail, how order should be quelled. By this pattern not one of you should live an aged man, for other ruffians as their fancies wrought, with self-same hand, self-reason, and self-right, would shark on you. And men like ravenous fishes would feed on one another. Oh, desperate as you are. Wash your foul minds with tears, and those same hands that you like rebels lift against the peace, lift up for peace, and your unreverent knees make them your feet and ill to be forgiven. You'll put down strangers, kill them, cut their throats, possess their houses, and lead the majesty of law in Liam to slip him like a hound. Say now, the king, as he is clement, if the offender mourn, should so much come to short of your great trespass, as but to banish you. Whither would you go? What country by the nature of your error should give you harbour? Go you to France, to Flanders, to any German province, to Spain or Portugal, nay, anywhere that not adheres to England, why then you must needs be strangers. Would you be pleased to find a nation of such barbarous temper that breaking out in hideous violence will not afford you an abode on earth, whet their detested knives against your throats, spurn you like dogs, like as if that God owed not nor made not you, that the claimants were not all appropriate to your comforts, but chartered unto them. What would you think to be thus used? This is the stranger's case. This your mountainous inhumanity.
I will be declaiming a poem which I wrote entitled Insomnia. Insomnia is my word du jour. White papers in their masses cover the floor. Black coffee is my fuel, of that at least I'm sure. I'm listening to this Stevie Nicks song I've heard 1,000,000 times before. My body's on fire, but the flames are all fake. 72 hours and I'm still wide awake. My heart yearns for answers. That excuse I shall make. Doesn't anyone realize exactly what is at stake? My thoughts are sketches on paper, smudged and crude. They try to console me. Honestly, I'm not in the mood. My conscience is naked. These words in the nude. Jim Morrison nourishes me. I still need real food. I'm not oblivious to the fact that I've fallen from grace, but no matter what, I've got to keep up this pace. The world won't wait forever. It's an unforgiving race. God, I sound like Humbert. Oh, jury, pleading my case. I'm completely obsessed with this whole James Dean aesthetic. I'm in love with Liz Taylor, a dead woman. Yeah, I know it's pathetic. These restless nights are hardly poetic. I've thrown out my false smiles. I'm not into synthetic. Kurt Cobain is a preacher high up in a pulpit. He may have not had a gun, but he certainly had a bullet. 4 a.m., still wide awake in search of the culprit. Behold, the source of all my teenage angst bullshit. But on these nights, I read Lolita and Plath. It's like fire in the forest. I'm just trying to forge my own path. Honestly, I'm happy. I know you can't do the math. It's only these pages that have known the full force of my wrath.
Prayer for Birth by Louis MacNeice. I am not yet born. Oh, hear me. Let not the blood-sucking bat, or the rat, or the stoat, or the club-footed ghoul come near me. I am not yet born. Console me. I fear that the human race may, with tall walls wall me, with strong drugs dope me, with wise lies lure me, on black racks rack me, in bloodbaths roll me. I am not yet born. Provide me with water to dandle me, grass to grow for me, trees to talk to me, sky to sing to me, birds, and a white light in the back of my mind to guide me. I am not yet born. Forgive me for the sins that in me the world shall commit. My words when they speak me, my thoughts when they think me, my treason engendered by traitors beyond me, my life when they murder, by means of my hands, my death when they live me. I am not yet born. Rehearse me in the parts I must play, in the cues I must take. When old men lecture me, bureaucrats hector me, mountains frown at me, lovers laugh at me. The white waves call me to folly, and the desert calls me to doom. And the beggar refuses my gift, and my children curse me. I am not yet born, oh hear me. Let not the man who is beast, or who thinks he is God, come near me. I am not yet born, oh fill me with strength against those who would freeze my humanity, would dragoon me into a lethal automaton, would make me a cog in a machine, a thing with one face, a thing, and against all those who would dissipate my entirety, would blow me like thistledown, hither and thither, or hither and thither, like water held in the hands, spill me. Let them not make me a stone. Let them not spill me. Otherwise, kill me.
Mark Antony's speech, Friends Romans Countrymen, from William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you that Caesar was ambitious. If it was so, it were a grievous fault. And grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under the leaf of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honourable man. So are they all honourable men. Come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honourable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransom did the general coffer fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honourable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure, he is an honourable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment! Thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. Thank you.
I will be doing an extract from Scorched Earth by Joseph Stalin. Comrades, citizens, brothers and sisters, men of our army and navy, I am addressing you, my friends. The perfidious military attack on our fatherland began on June 22nd. By Hitler's Germany, it is continuing. Grave danger hangs over our country. Above all, it is essential that our people, the Soviet people, should understand the full immensity of the danger that hangs over our country and abandon all complacency, all heedlessness, all those moods of peaceful, constructive work, which was so natural before the war, but which are now fatal when war has fundamentally changed everything. There must be no room in our ranks for whimperers and cowards, for panic-mongers and deserters. Our people must know no fear in the fight and must selflessly join our war of liberation, or war against fascists and slavers. All the peoples of the Soviet Union must rise against the enemy and defend their rights and their land. The Red Army, Red Navy, and all citizens of the Soviet Union must defend every inch of Soviet soil, must fight to the last drop of blood for our towns and villages, must display the daring initiative and intelligence that are inherent in our people. We must wage a ruthless fight against all disorganized of the rear, deserters, panic-mongers, rumor-mongers, exterminate spies, divisionists, enemy parachutists, rendering rapid aid in all this to our destroyer battalions. We must reckon with all this, and not fall victim to provocation. All who, by their panic-mongering and cowardice, hinder the work of our defense, no matter who they are, must be immediately hauled before a military tribunal. Collective farmers must drive off all their grain and hand over their cattle to state authorities for transportation to the rear. All valuable properties, including non-ferrous metals, grain, and fuel, which cannot be withdrawn, must, without fail, be destroyed. In areas occupied by the enemy, guerrilla units, mounted and on foot, must be formed to foment guerrilla warfare everywhere, to blow up bridges, towns, damage telephone and telegraph wires. All our forces, for the support of our heroic Red Army and glorious Red Navy, all the force of our people, for the demolition of our enemy, forward to our victory!
Bruce and the Spider by Bernard Barton. For Scotland and for freedom's right, the Bruce his part has played. In 5 successive fields of fight, been conquered and dismayed. Once more against the English toast, his band he led, and once more lost. The mead for which he fought, and now from battle, faint and worn. A homeless fugitive, forlorn, a hut's lone shelter sought. And cheerless was that resting place for him who claimed the throne. His canopy, devoid of grace, the rude rough beams alone. The heather couch, his only bed, yet well I ween had slumber fled from couch of eider down. Through darksome night till dawn of day, absorbed in wakeful thought he lay of Scotland and her crown. The sun rose brightly, and its gleam fell on that hapless bed, and tinged with light each shapeless beam which roofed the lowly shed. When looking up with wistful eye, the Bruce beheld a spider try his filmy thread to fling from beam to beam of that rude cot, and well the insect's toilsome lot taught Scotland's future king. 6 times the gossamer thread the wary spider threw. In vain the filmy line was sped, for powerless o'er and through. Each aim appeared and back recalled the patient insect, 6 times foiled. And yet, unconquered still, and soon the Bruce with eagle eye saw him prepare once more to try his courage, strength, and skill. One effort more, his 7th and last, the hero hailed the sign, and on the wished-for beam hung fast that slender silken line. Slight as it was, his spirit caught the more than omen for his thought, the lesson well could trace, which even he who runs may read, that perseverance gain its meed, and patience wins the race.
the first part of 1919 by W.B. Yeats. Many ingenious, lovely things are gone that seemed sheer miracle to the multitude, protected from the circle of the moon that pitches common things about, there stood, amid the ornamental bronze and stone, an ancient image made of olive wood, and gone, Phidias' famous ivories, and all the golden grasshoppers and bees. We too had many pretty toys when young, a law indifferent to blame or praise, to bribe or threat, habits that made old wrong melt down as it were wax in the sun's rays. Public opinion ripening for so long, we thought it would outlive all future days. Oh, what fine thought we had, because we thought that the worst rogues and rascals had died out. All teeth were drawn, all ancient tricks unlearned, and a great army but a showy thing. What matter that no cannon had been turned into a ploughshare? Parliament and king thought that unless little powder burned, the trumpeters might burst from trumpeting, and yet it lack all glory. And, perchance, the guardsmen's drowsy chargers would not prance. Now, days are dragon-ridden. The nightmare rides upon sleep. A drunken soldiery can leave the mother murdered at her door to crawl in her own blood and go scot-free. The night can sweat with terror as before we pieced our thoughts into philosophy and planned to bring the world under a rule, who are but weasels fighting in a hole. He who can read the sign, nor sink unmanned into the half-deceit of some intoxicant from shallow wits, who knows no work can stand, whether health, wealth, or peace of mind was spent on masterwork of intellect or hand, no honour leave its mighty monument, has but one comfort left. All triumph would but break upon his ghostly solitude. But is there any comfort to be found? Man is in love and loves what vanishes. What more is there to say? That country round none dared admit, if such a thought were his, incendiary or bigot could be found to burn that stump on the Acropolis, or break in bits the famous ivories, or traffic in the grasshoppers or bees.
An Arundel Tomb by Philip Larkin. Side by side, their faces blurred. The Earl and Countess lie in stone, their proper habits vaguely shown as jointed armour, stiffened pleat, and that faint hint of the absurd, the little dogs under their feet. Such plainness of the pre-Baroque hardly involves the eye, until it meets his left-hand gauntlet, still clasped empty in the other, and one sees with a sharp, tender shock his hand withdrawn, holding her hand. They would not think to lie so long. Such faithfulness in effigy was just a detail friends would see, a sculptor's sweet commissioned grace thrown off in helping to prolong the Latin names around the base. They would not guess how early in their supine stationary voyage the air would change to soundless damage, turn the old tenantry away, how soon succeeding eyes begin to look, not read. Rigidly they persisted, linked through lengths and breadths of time. Snow fell, undated. Light each summer thronged the glass. A bright litter of bird calls strewed the same bone-riddled ground.
and up the path the endless altered people came, washing at their identity. Now helpless in the hollow of an unamoral age, a trough of smoke in slow suspended skeins above their scrap of history, only an attitude remains. Time has transfigured them into untruth. The stone fidelity they hardly meant has come to be their final blazon. And to prove our almost instinct, almost true, what will survive of us is love.
"1984 on the Tarka Trail" by Ted Hughes. The river is suddenly green, dense, bottle green, hard in the sun, dark as spinach. Drought pools bleach their craters. The river's floor is of fleece, tresses of some vile stuff that disintegrates to a slime as you touch it, leaving your fingers fouled with the stink of diesel. The river's glutted. A boom of plenty for algae, a festering olla podrida poured slowly. Surfactants, ammonia, phosphates, the whole banquet flushed in by sporadic thunderbursts, but never a flood enough to scour a sewer, never enough to resurrect a river. A bottleful is like sap, a rich urine with minuscule flying saucers whizzing in it down near the estuary. This goes into the mains. But nothing can help the patient. In the August afternoon, the golden picnic sun rays leaning dustily through the conifers gaze down at a ditch carcass, a puddled horror, bile draining from rags, the hulk of ribs. Charlie found a stranded mussel. He brought it up the fishing ladder. The lips gaped. We peered in, pried wider, parted her pearly gates to get a peek at her curtained uvula, queen of the river, still in her silken chamber. Or was it a yawn of putrid phlegm? Then the stench hit us. He yelled and flailed it from his fingers as if it had burnt him into a blaze of willow herb. God, the river's dead. Oh God, even the mussels are finished. The tale of a dying river does not end where you stand with the visitors at a sick bed, feeling the usual, nothing more than mangled helplessness. You cannot leave this hospital because Peter, the good corn farmer, with his 3+ tons of quality grain to the acre, behind him the Minnevag and Fisher's hard guarantee, which is the hired assurance of hired science, heaps poisons into you too. His upriver neighbour, just as overwhelmed, wades through slurry and silage. Where his father milked a herd of 20, he milks 90. Oozing effluent equal to the untreated sewage of a city the size of Gloucester. But Peter, clean corn farmer, nature protector, striding between lush hedge banks, he lets go bush to gladden the spider, past the carefully nursed, neglected nettles, a creche for the butterflies. The bird watcher, binoculars thumping his sternum, has measured his medicines towards that maximum yield into your dish for years, yes, and smiled up at the colluding sun, and returned over his corn, which now, near ripe, seems burned, oak dark with some fungus, 13 times between the drill and the reaper. 300 weight,
of 20, 10, 10 to the acre, 100-weight and a half straight of nitrum, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, the grand slam, each time 20 gallons to the acre into your dish with top-ups, and slug pellets, a bonus with the rest into your cup via the lifeless ditch, meaning your tap. Now you are as loaded with the data that cultivate his hopes in this brief gamble as the river is. As he is, too. He can't escape either. Neither can his lively young wife, who laughs if you ask them why they do what they do. Her voice ventriloquial, her shoulders jerking at their strings. But the children have to be educated.
I will be declaiming an extract from A Time to Kill by Keir Goldsman. I had a great summation all worked out, full of some sharp lawyering. But I'm not going to read it. I am here to apologize. I am young, and I am inexperienced. But you cannot hold Carly Haley responsible for my shortcomings. You see, in all this legal maneuvering, something has gotten lost. And that something is the truth. Now, it is an incumbent upon us lawyers, not just to seek the truth, but to find it, to live it. My teacher taught me that. Let's take Dr. Bass, for example. Now, obviously, I would never knowingly have put a convicted felon on the stand. I hope you can believe that. But what is the truth? That he is a disgraced liar? And what if I told you that the woman he was accused of raping was 17 and he was 23? And she later became his wife, bore his child, and is still married to that man today. Does that make his testimony more or less true? What is it in us that seeks the truth? Is it our minds? Or is it our hearts? Now, I set out to prove that a black man could receive a fair trial in the South, that we were all equal in the eyes of the law. That's not true. Because the eyes of the law are human eyes, yours and mine. And until we accept that, justice is never going to be even-handed. It will remain nothing more than a reflection of our own prejudices. So until that day, we have a duty under God to seek the truth. Not with our eyes, and not with our minds, where fear and hate turn commonality into prejudice, but with our hearts, where we don't know better. Now, I'm going to tell y'all a story. I want y'all to close your eyes while I tell the story. I want you to listen to me. I want you to listen to yourselves. This story is about a young girl walking home from the grocery store one sunny afternoon. I want you to picture this little girl. Suddenly, a truck races up. Two men jump out and grab her. They drag her into a nearby field and they tie her up, and they rip her clothes from her body. Then they jump on her. First one, then the other, raping her, shattering everything innocent and pure. Vicious thrusts in a fog of drunken breath and sweat. And when they're done, after they've murdered her tiny womb, killing any chance for her to bear children or to have life beyond her own, they decide to use her for target practice. So they start throwing full beer cans at her. They throw them so hard that it tears the flesh all the way down to the bone. And they urinate on her. Now comes the hanging. They have a rope. They tie a noose. Imagine the noose pulling tight around her neck and a sudden blinding jerk. She's pulled into the air and her feet and legs go kicking and they don't find the ground. The hanging branch isn't strong enough. It snaps and she falls back to earth. So they pick her up, throw her in the back of the truck, and drive her out to Foggy Creek Bridge and pitch her over the edge. Then she falls down some 300 feet to the creek bottom below. Can you see her? raped, beaten, broken body, soaked in their urine, soaked in their semen, soaked in our blood, left to die. Can you see her? I want you to picture that little girl. Now imagine she's white. The defense rests, Your Honor.
I am reciting an extract from The Colour of Magic by Terry Pratchett. Thus it was that hurrying through the crowded, flare-lit evening bazaars of Moorpork, with the luggage trundling along behind him, Rincewind jostled a tall, dark figure, turned to deliver a few suitable curses, and beheld death. It had to be death. No one else went about with empty eye sockets, and of course, the scythe over one shoulder was another clue. As Rincewind stared in horror, a courting couple, laughing at some private joke, walked straight through the apparition without appearing to notice. Death, insofar as it was possible, in a face with no movable features, looked surprised. "Rincewind," said Death, in tones as deep and heavy as the slamming of leaden doors far underground. Said Rincewind, trying to back away from the eyeless stare. "But why are you here, Rincewind?" Boom, boom went crypt lids in the worm-haunted fastnesses under old mountains. Why not?" said Rincewind. "Anyway, I'm sure you've got lots to be doing, so if you'll just—" "I was surprised that you jostled me, Rincewind, for I have an appointment with thee this very night." "Oh no, not—" "Of course! What's so bloody vexing about the whole business is I was due to meet thee in Pseudopolis." "But that's 500 miles away." "You don't have to tell me that. It's obvious the whole system's got screwed up again. I can see that. Look, I don't suppose there's any chance that you could—" Rincewind backed away, arms spread protectively in front of him. The dried fish salesman in a nearby stall watched this madman with interest. "I could lend you a very fast horse. It wouldn't hurt a bit." "No!" Rincewind turned and ran. Death watched him go and shrugged bitterly. "Sod you, then," said Death. Then Death turned and noticed the dried fish salesman. With a snarl, he reached out a bony finger and stopped the man's heart, but he didn't take much pride in it. Then Death remembered what was due to happen later that night. It would not be true to say that Death smiled, for in any case his features were, perforce, frozen in a calcareous grin. But he hummed a little tune, cheerful as a plague pit, and pausing only to extract the life from a passing mayfly, and 1/9 of the lives from a cat cowering under a fish cart, Death turned on his heel and set off towards the broken drum.
Storm by Tim Minchin. In a North London top floor flat, all white walls, white carpet, white cat, rice paper partitions, modern art and ambition, the host of Physician. Bright bloke has his own practice, his girlfriend's an actress. An old maid of ours from back home, and they're always great fun, so to dinner we've come. The fifth guest is an unknown. The hosts have just thrown us together for a favour, because this girl's just arrived from Australia, and she's moved to North London, or she's a sister of someone, or has some connection. As we make introductions, I'm struck by her beauty. She's irrefutably fair with dark eyes and dark hair. But as she sits, I admit I'm a little bit wary because I notice the tip of the wing of a fairy tattooed on that popular area just above the derriere. And when she says, "I'm Sagittarian," I confess a pigeonhole starts to form and is immediately filled with pigeon when she says her name is Storm. Conversation is initially bright and light-hearted, but it's not long before storm gets started. You can't know anything. Knowledge is merely opinion. She opines over her Cabernet Sauvignon vis-a-vis some unhippily empirical comment made by me. Not a good start, I think. We're only on pre-dinner drinks, and from across the room, my wife winds her eyes, silently begs me, be nice. A matrimonial warning not worth ignoring. The food is delicious, and Storm, whilst avoiding all meats, happily sits and eats, as the good doctor slightly pissily holds court on some anachronistic aspect of medical history, when Storm suddenly insists, but the human body is a mystery. Science just falls in a hole when it tries to explain the nature of the soul. My hostess throws me a glance. She, like my wife, knows there's a chance that I might go off on one of my rare but fun rants, but I shan't, though. My lips are sealed, and I just want to enjoy the meal. But although Storm is starting to get my goat, I have no intention of rocking the boat. Although it's coming a bit of a wrestle, because like her meteorological namesake, Storm has no such concerns for our vessel. Pharmaceutical companies are the enemy. They promote drug dependency at the cost of the natural remedy that all our bodies need. They are immoral and driven by greed. Why take drugs when herbs can solve it? Why use chemicals when homeopathic solvents can resolve it? I think it's time we all return to live with natural medical alternatives. And try as I like, a small crack appears in my diplomacy dike. By definition, I begin, alternative medicine, and I continue, has either not been proved to work or been proved not to work. Do you know what they call alternative medicine that's been proved to work? Medicine. Oh, so you don't believe in any natural remedies? Oh, on the contrary, Storm, before I came to tea, I took a remedy derived from the bark of a willow tree, a painkiller that's virtually side effect free. It's got a weird name, darling. What is it? Maspirin? Baspirin? Oh, yeah, aspirin, which I paid about $1 for down at the local drugstore. The debate briefly abates, my host collect plates, but as a return with dessert, Storm suddenly asserts, Shakespeare said it first. There are more things in heaven and earth than exist in your philosophy. Science is just how we're trained to look at reality. It doesn't explain love or spirituality. How does science explain auras, psychics, the afterlife, the power of prayer? I'm becoming aware I'm like a rabbit suddenly trapped in the blinding headlights of vacuous crap. Look, Storm, I don't want to bore you, but there's no such thing as an aura. Reading auras is like reading minds, or tea leaves, or star signs, or meridian lines. These people aren't applying a skill. They're either lying or mentally ill. Same goes for those who think they can hear God's demands, or spiritual healers who think they have magic hands. By the way, why do you think it's okay for people to pretend that they can talk to the dead? Isn't that totally fucked in the head? Lying to some crying woman whose child has died, telling her that you're in touch with the other side? I think that's fundamentally sick. Do we need to clarify here that there's no such thing as a psychic? Storm, to her credit, despite my derision, keeps firing off cliches with startling precision, like a sniper using bollocks for ammunition. You're so sure of your position that you're just close-minded. I think your faith in science and test is just as blind as any other fundamentalist. Oh, wow. Good point. Let me think for a bit. Oh, wait, my mistake. That's absolute bullshit.
Absolutely fantastic. A range of declamations. We've been on a field with Stalin waiting to rouse the troops for perhaps the bloodiest part of the war there has ever been. We've been in a North London dining room dealing with an Australian who may be a little confused about reality. We have been in an alternative reality mounted on the back of an elephant, on the back of a turtle, on the back of a turtle, on the back of a turtle. I could go on, but I won't. There's something called recursion, I think. People know about maths over there, which really isn't my thing. We've been with a dying old man. We have been with an old man trying to teach a young man through the voice of a 14 or 15-year-old boy. And I don't think there are many places in the world, let alone schools in the world, where you can have that range in one evening and where you can have the support of friends and family who have been here throughout. It's been a glorious competition. In some ways, this is the nicest part of it because the competition is done. As I said, this is a celebration. However, there is one final element. The judges are asked at the time, on Monday, when they're here, we don't make them stay 2 more days to watch your behaviour in hall and make sure that you're using the right fork. But we do ask that they write down the name of an overall winner, a Victor Ludorum, as we say in Oxfordshire, down the pub, and they have done so. The overall winner will be announced in just a moment. But I do want to point out we have 15 winners, of course, here, 15 people who've done superbly, 5 actual winners who came first in their year. I won't go on to give a cliche about we're all very much winners just for coming, because it's not that sort of school, and you don't all get prizes, and we don't have stickers. But I do want to say that the most important part of declamations is the idea that a work of art will live with you. My predecessor used to point out that you can't walk into the National Gallery and steal a picture. It's been tried, but it's not advisable. And take it home with you and claim it's yours. You can't steal the crown jewels, but you can take a poem by Philip Larkin, by Ted Hughes. You can take a speech by Shakespeare. You can take the dreams and hopes and ambitions and fears of a lawyer in deep South America. And you can make them your own, and you can find room for them in your heart, and it will stay there forever. I remember reading a poem. I didn't think it stuck with me. Tiny poem before I became a father. And it went something like this. There was jam on the door handle, and I quelled the anger that rose within me, because I thought of the time that there would be no jam and no tiny hand. I read that a few years before I became a father, and it was one of those things I read in a book and I flipped through, and then I became a father, and it's all jam. And it's all tiny hands. And I don't think I'm ever going to forget it. And that's what good writing can do. That's what we try to do in the English department, and more importantly, we try to do as a whole school. So that's the important bit. And one final thing, because I know you've been waiting for this. One last thing. When I first came to this school, several years ago, after 10 years teaching in what I still call normal schools, where children get to go home, and everything was extraordinary, everything was new to me, and I wasn't sure about single-sex education. I spoke to the warden. He said, what's extraordinary is that you do find that at girls' schools, the girls feel more confident about doing physics and maths and things that might be seen as traditionally boys' subjects. And at Radley, you will be amazed by the number of boys who take part in music, in art, in poetry. And there is no sense this is a girl's thing to do or it's a girlish thing to do. And I think tonight is evidence of that. But no more. It doesn't matter if you're Daniel or Danielle, it doesn't matter if you're Jack or Jackie, it doesn't matter if you're Stephen or Stephanie. What matters ultimately is that the language stays with you. And thank you very much for coming. If I could ask Miss Mulberg to bring the cabinet of treasures. You're very kind. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. This is the bit where I open this and something explodes, right? Green wire? Do I cut green wire with? Oh, okay, it's fine. It's just an envelope. It's the closest I'm ever going to come to Hollywood. The Victor Ludorum for Radley Declamations 2019 is Jamie Walker. Mr. Glenn the Dolby. very upset if you went without that. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Do help yourselves to drinks. We didn't have a chance to have some before. And thank you again.